Welcome everyone, thanks for braving the rain, we really appreciate it. Welcome to Chelse, welcome to Ernesto.
Thank you.
I opened my last interview with Jim and asked him his thoughts on improvisation, so I have a quote from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. The quote, the definition is, the act or art of speaking or performing without practicing or preparing ahead of time.
I want to know what you would say about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's not how we do it. I think it's without planning what you're going to say, but it's definitely not without practicing, because you have to develop the language first. It's like speaking in a new language. So you may not plan what you're going to say, but you need to learn the words that you're going to use.
So that you can be free with it and express yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think improvising when it comes to music, yeah, it's a lot more practice than that. But you don't necessarily, it's not just regurgitating stuff that you've already done.
Like, it's not like improvising the same things you practice exactly.
No,
it's
no.
stringing it together in a different way. And yeah, like I think especially in the context of like written music, there's usually also an intention behind it. So I guess that's the only other thing I'd add is that when you're improvising, it's not necessarily purposeless or directionless. There's something that you're trying to say with it, and you don't always know what that is when you start out, and it doesn't always stay the same. But it's not pre-planning, but being deliberate about your choice.
And I think it's also in what we do, it's also so much informed by what's happening around you.
Yeah.
In the chart, but also just what all the other musicians are improvising behind you that informs what you're going to play. So you can't pre-plan, because if you pre-plan, then you're not listening.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's a crucial element to it then, isn't it?
It's a conversation. It has to be a conversation. And between you and everyone else in the band, and between you and if it's over, like like if it's in a big band, so there's backgrounds, and so there's stuff that you know that you can anticipate, then it's also, you're still conversing with that. It's just that's not improvised, but you still
you know what the backdrop is. Like this is sort of the contour of the solo. And we had a couple tunes that we played today where there's two soloists at the same time, and there's backgrounds, and there's a rhythm section that's also improvising. So there's a lot of layers to it, but it's still the idea of like, well, generally, like all the written stuff is like, this is the picture of like my intention or the story behind the song. And then what everyone else brings to it is the spontaneity of how I interpret this feeling in this moment. Like if we're thinking about political angst, then this is how I feel about our government right now, as opposed to the next time we play the show.
Right. If you're not singing, you can get away with a lot of things, right?
This is also true.
That's great.
Especially with charts like yours with the big band, do you give your musicians X number of bars that they're free, or how do you count it in and out?
Sometimes it's open and sometimes it's not, is the short answer. Depending on what the intention calls for. Some things are just like, we're going to sit here until you said what you need to say, and then some things are like, it's going to go on after this amount of time, because there's only, like, I only need you to say this much. So that's also a conversation in itself, like deciding when is the end, especially when I'm not the one playing, because then it's like, I have to be in the middle of that and still be like, all right, I think we're good now. You have a lot more room in the small group setting, which is
the more
fun.
musicians, the more structured everything has to be. So like even in my band, it's a sextet, so things are still fairly structured. If it was a quartet, it'd be even less, and if it was a trio, it'd be even less, and then duo, you can do whatever you want. So I think it just depends on the size of the band, that's how much you're gonna kind of pre-decide how things are gonna go. But there still might be sections that are wide open that you say you just play until you're done, and then make it obvious that you're done.
Now in your sextet, when you're giving charts out, does each person know what the other person's chart is, or do you do a Davis with? Because when Davis was at Blue Note, and he would give out new charts, nobody in the band was allowed to see anybody else's charts, so they had to listen.
Right. Well, we've played this stuff enough that they kind of know what each other's doing. But yeah, the first time we play it, it's all a big surprise. You just play your part, and then you learn how it fits in with everybody else. But now, I mean, we've done this enough that everyone kind of knows how they fit with everything. I think it's important, you know, yeah, you should be listening, but there's also stuff that you can, I mean, if you're going to perform it the first time, I think it's better if you have an idea of what is going on around you. Otherwise, you know, you're just going to play and you're going to listen, sure, and you're going to try and react, but you're always going to be reacting to what just happened instead of anticipating what's about to happen. And then you're just constantly behind the 8 ball, and I feel like that would be a really kind of stressful, frustrating way to perform.
I think one of the things that you're sort of getting at that I wanted to jump in with is that the music evolves too. It's not like we've written these charts and then they stay the same. Like the notes on the page are the same, but all the stuff that happens after that, it's part of getting more inside the music. It's part of being able to anticipate, because even the first few times you play something, you're like, what happens here again? What's going on next? What's the cue out of this section? And then the more that you play it, the more you can be like, oh, I know what's going to happen here. This is what's going to be a thing. And like, I know you guys have done a couple shows this summer already, and on the tour, we were like on show 5 or 6, and people were coming up being like, I didn't know this was what the backgrounds were. Like, I only heard it tonight, and it was just like, really? You've been playing this song for like a year? Because there's so much to take in that every time you get to play it, you hear something a little bit different. So it's a part of just like learning where everyone sits and being able to hear the big picture, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can both of you tell me, or can you even recall what your first experience improvising was?
I think mine was, I got called to sub into jazz band when I was in grade 8, because they didn't let grade 8s join the jazz band. But I could read music, and I sort of knew what was going on. And so this is like day 3 maybe of grade 9 jazz band, and we played a blues, and my band teacher pointed at each one of us and was like, okay, you're gonna take a solo. We talked a little bit about like what the blues scale was and stuff like that, but you know, we'd spent maybe 10 minutes on this, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, everyone's gonna play solo, and I was just like, what? Literally thrown in the deep end. And every time that I have like really sort of expanded my concept as an improviser, it's been something like that. It's been like, you've never heard of this thing before? I'm gonna tell it to you in about 30 seconds, and now you're gonna go try it. And I'm usually out there just like freaking out the whole time, like, I don't know what's going on. And then you do it, and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah, it becomes a part of you, right? And you just kind of grow with it.
Yeah.
How about you, Ernesto?
I can't, to be honest, I can't recall a specific story. I mean, because I started playing jazz on the drums before I played it on anything else, so it was a little, and everything, as a jazz drummer, everything's improvised, right? So it kind of just evolves naturally from, you know, the first thing you play, you learn a swing beat, and then your teacher's like, okay, and then you just make stuff up. You know,
make stuff up, right?
And that's how you play jazz drums. So I remember being scared because I didn't know what to do, but then realizing that no one else knew what to do either, and so you just kind of
embrace that, right?
Yeah, you just try stuff and try not to worry too much about it.
Take it as a positive opportunity, right? As opposed to a stressful thing where, well, I'm going to play the wrong note.
Yeah, there is no wrong note.
There is no wrong note. That's a beautiful
Or at least
thing.
you're not very far from one.
You're always
it
really
up,
close.
Bend it down. There have been some really beautiful moments where these groups have just elevated the level of music, and the audience has just gone with it. It's been really lovely to see. Ernesto, you suggested talking about music as a business. Can you give me some reflections on that, like how to make a living or how to organize a tour? Chelse, if you have any thoughts, you can chime in.
Oh no,
too.
I want to hear what Ernesto has to say about this.
Go on.
Yeah, I think it's important as musicians that we function as a business, because if this is how you want to make a living, then you have to work at it in that way. And so I know for myself, I started a while ago with applying for grants and setting up tours, and we're so lucky being in Canada because there's so much funding that we have access to. And I have a lot of friends in the US who don't have access to any of this, and they're very jealous, as they should be. They absolutely should be.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of you know, slowly trying to figure everything out, and then I think it's important that you constantly consider yourself a business and figure out how you can further your career and what you want to do next. And you kind of, you can't just sit and wait for someone else to do it for you.
Waiting for the phone to ring?
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, it might work for some people, but it didn't work for me. I just made it happen instead.
Yeah.
You know?
I've always just been very impatient, which solves a lot of problems because I don't want to wait for someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And if someone tells me I can't do something, then I'll just do it. Which was very much how the big band started. It was like, oh, I can't play my trance here. I'll just start my own band. And then so I guess for me it is a lot of sort of jumping in the deep end and then learning the hard way. But while I was in school, one of my teachers said something along the lines of, when they get a call to do a project of any kind, the first person they talk to is it's like you have to deal with the secretary, you have to be in business mode, and then you do the negotiation. Then once that's done, it's all fine and dandy. It's all, this is creative and I'm so excited about it. Or even it's not, but now that we've dealt with all the money and the time and all the finer points of it, now we can just go in and have some fun. And I thought that was a really healthy way to look at it too, because it's really easy to get wrapped up in something that looks very shiny and very cool, and then forget that your rent is still due regardless of what you're doing. And I'm lucky too. I've also been on the grant thing. I got into that really early because you can't take a 19-piece across the country without a crap ton of grant money. So I'm lucky that I've had that to lean on as well. But mostly on for all the other stuff I do, even if it's close friends coming to me, it's always just let's get the numbers out of the way. Let's just deal with whatever we have to do, because if there's something in it that's worthwhile, I'm going to commit to this project. If I have the time, if we're being treated fairly, then there is no doubt that I will want to be involved. And that's a business thing as well. You have to be able to pay your people.
Yeah.
So,
Chelsea, you suggested that some improvisation takes place on the road in the efforts to organize your people. Can you tell me about that?
I think you can attest to this. Walking into a new room, I've discovered, is one of the most nerve-wracking things. And we did that we knew 2 of the spaces that we were going to, and even then it was a bit of a crapshoot, because our one of the spaces we knew, the stage was smaller, and the only place that I was pretty confident of was here. So we're gonna end with with the stop that I know everything about. So it's a lot of walking in and being oh, this is how boomy the room is, or oh, we're in a bass trap, or oh, it's very, very small. We played at a tiny club in Vancouver, and it was just okay, so we're gonna have to cram 19 people in here, and we filled the club also. People were walking in and walking out because they couldn't find a spot. It was just there's 20 people in here on the stage, and we've taken over 4 of the tables, and it was insane. You have to I knew sort of the pre-planning versus the not. It's I knew it was gonna be fine, because I'd done the work and I had looked into everything, but it doesn't change the fact that you walk into the room and it's oh, maybe if we just tilt this, or maybe we don't have enough chairs, or we don't have or it's we need more of this and we need something more like this, and if you have this, then we're going to ask for this extra thing that we don't need but we would like. And a lot of just sort of making sure that everyone is on the same page about how to make that work, but also that we just have to go in and make it work. We don't know we don't know how it's going to look once we walk into the room.
So you improvise then?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for these two?
You travel with Soundman?
No. Wow. You just kind of hope.
Yeah, you gotta.
Just kind of hope that.
Great musician
I mean,
can be killed by a bad sound.
Yeah, as a drummer, sometimes it can be really frustrating, because the first thing they'll do is all right, play the bass drum. And you're oh no, we don't want bass drum in any monitors or any but you just have to hope that they're not gonna destroy your sound out there, and then all you can do is control what you sound like on stage. Really, I mean, you can try and you can ask for certain things and but I mean there aren't budgets to travel with Soundman, and I think most of the places it would be kind of weird to walk in and
It's okay.
I just think for me it's I already have 19 people. On the other hand, on the one hand, what's one more? But when I really got down to it, it was like, I can't afford that. I have to trust my people to be good at what they do, and I have to trust their people to be good at what they do, and I have to trust everyone to be able to communicate that, and that is also a huge crapshoot. But it usually works out. Yeah. Sort of.
I'm going to finish this off. Fern's about to go on. You can hear it. I want to thank Chelse McBride and Ernesto Cervini.
Thanks, everybody.
I realized that